There are days when it's hard to be a geek. This day is kind of that day, but not really. Welcome, everybody, to a wonderful episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions for November 28th, 2015. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drac, a.k.a. the guy who apparently hates everybody's past except his own, but halfway into his own, depending on the comments. And welcome to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. If you guys have not, or if you've not been watching this show, first of all, welcome. Second of all, this is the weekly podcast where we talk about all the weekly events in Geek. That can be anything from tech and gaming to movies, TV, anime, you name it. It's geeky. We'll probably cover it. And of course, I am being joined by my usual panel here. And first of all, we have fellow YouTuber, the Shadow Blazer 3000. He's live from the hospital, aren't you? I mean, you survived the horrible endurance trial that is Black Friday. So I'm kind of surprised we're not seeing a body cast on you right now. How are you, Shadow Blazer?
Well, yes, I did make it through Black Friday all right, but that's because, once again, I worked really early in the morning, and because my store doesn't do doorbuster sales, we don't have mobs of crowds trying to push their way in.
No grandmas holding the metal bats?
No grandmas, no cans of mace, no whacking me with the bags.
Do you want to confirm that you don't have a body cast on so that people know
I want to confirm that I do not have a body cast. It's kind of hard to, without standing up and everything.
Yes.
And other than a few other ups and downs this week, all things considered, it's been a pretty good end to the week because, well, we'll probably get to that when I get to one cool thing tonight.
All right, cool. Then we are also being joined by Stephen Romney, a.k.a. of Studio Phantasma, Studio Ghost, and of Romney's Reviews of From the Shelf, and so many other things that he actually does. Romney, how has this week treated you?
Well, so far so good. I mean, work's been kind of kicking my ass, but, well, it's been nice to actually get some time off and not have to worry about going into work for a while because, yeah, Q4 gets busy. I mean, without giving too much away, I deal with insurance. You've got so many people trying to do open enrollment to get coverage in time for January, especially with the ACA stuff. So it's been a bit of a drag, but Thanksgiving was good. And as part of it's not really part of my one cool thing, which is why I'm mentioning it now. One of the things I got on Black Friday was that I got a Wii U.
Oh my gosh! Yes, yep. we are still going to have the one cool thing. A lot of people have been asking if that's going to be coming back or not. Yes, it is. It's just we've had some questions that I also wanted to get to. So we actually were going to do one cool thing, and I'm glad, I guess, that Romney has gotten to it. Yep. And he has Earthbound Zero.
Yeah, my one cool thing is actually something completely different, so that's why I'm showing it now, is because my one cool thing is not related to the Wii U in any way, actually.
All right. And then we are also missing our fourth panelist, Aldo Gomez. He actually is out celebrating with family because Thanksgiving just barely passed us by, and so that's another thing that we should all be thankful for, is that we are all not in turkey comas, which could have technically happened. I actually am surprised I am not in a turkey coma. I will probably be tomorrow, but
not really in a turkey coma, but we did experience feelings of shame and embarrassment, which mainly comes about whenever anybody plays Cards Against Humanity.
Oh no, that actually has been requested. We will probably need to tack that on at some point.
Yeah, I played it with my sister and my brothers, and my mom was within earshot of everything, and just bit by bit, we all just felt this sense of. She knows it's like we know we're all monsters, and the veneer is slowly dissolving.
Yes, well, I wish I could say that tonight is going to absolve you of this, but it really isn't.
It isn't,
because we've got some stuff to talk about. So
as they say in Night Vale, see something, say nothing, drink to forget.
Exactly. So at this point, let's go ahead and get into our first story, which did get fan requested and brought to a Change.org petition, although unfortunately that petition isn't existing anymore. We'll get into that in a second. Oh, there's tons. There's tons of petitions. So the first story that we have to talk about this week is about a little-known franchise called DOA Extreme Beach Volleyball. It's kind of hard not to avoid this concept. Even the Game Over Thinker had to talk about this week. So due to a couple of, dare I say, broken English tweets, Koei Tecmo has been getting asked here and there if they were, this is the part that blows my mind, it's been 10 years, I think, roughly, or 5 years, since the last Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball has come out, and they just barely did another one for Japan, and they've been getting asked, is it going to come to North American and European shores? And, well, here's the thing. If it was, then they would put a release date out. But they had to come out with an official statement saying, no, we are not going to come out with it. And I have to read the tweet here because it's just, man. So this literally is the response. Do you know many issues happening in video game industry with regard to how to treat female in video game industry? No, please tell me video game industry one more time. We do not want to talk those things here, but certainly we have gone through in the last year or two to come to our decision. Thank you. They also have responded a little bit later in the same kind of fashion, but it's basically a PR response saying, no, DOA Extreme Beach Volleyball 3 is not coming to the West. We don't want to have to deal with the censors. We don't want to have to deal with the SRB. We don't want to have to deal with any of that. They have said that I guess you are able to import the game and it will work on your is it PS? Yeah, I think it's PS3.
Yeah, Sony tends to.
It came to the previous generation, not this current one. So you can do that, but they're not going to release the game here. And I can't explain this other than the fact that they made this response sparked the internet forward and apparently offended the internet, even though I've looked at the sales numbers. This thing didn't do as well as they thought it might in the North American market. And now we have a bunch of change.org petitions to have them reverse their decision. The change.org petition that I got referred to was that Koei Tecmo be compelled to tell the truth on why they're not releasing it in the West. Yeah, a petition's not going to have that happen, people.
Yeah, it comes with this very, very simple response. This is a business. They are out to make money. They're not going to release something that is not going to make enough money to warrant going through all of the efforts to localize it for a North American market.
Well, but see, here's the funny part of it, is this didn't do well in Japan either.
No.
The only place that this is the part that makes me kind of sad as an individual. The best place that this game sold was in the North American market, technically. It just didn't sell very well.
Yeah, it's very much a niche title, much like the Senran Kagura series. Although, yeah, I get it. Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball has existed for a lot longer than Senran Kagura, but it's very much a niche title. And really, given the sales figures of even their main Dead or Alive series, it's just not feasible for Koei Tecmo to go through all the trouble of trying to release that game, especially when they're trying to broker a very productive relationship with Nintendo currently.
Yeah, and on top of that, apparently there's also even updates going on that Itagaki has been asked about, whether or not he agrees with the Extreme Beach Volleyball 3 and the decision from Koei Tecmo. He actually came out and said they actually were asking him to come up with a bunch more risque games that would probably make it sell better, basically more sexy games for it. Yeah. And he said that he would not, and actually this is part of the whole thing that Itagaki can't work with Koei Tecmo anymore because he didn't want to demean the characters that he had created, which I can respect him for. The other thing too was I think it was just that he didn't want to demean the characters.
Well, didn't want to demean the characters, wanted more people to focus on the actual sophisticated fighting system of Dead or Alive, which I agree is fairly sophisticated, and they actually tried remedying this with Last Round, but then the fanboys complained, saying, "Oh, there's no skimpy outfits! We need the skimpy outfits!"
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where I hate to tell you this, Itagaki, but I know that you created this series with the best of intentions, but when your series is only known for, and I'm sorry, I'm not a Dead or Alive fan. I've played very little of it. I love the fact that it gave Ryu Hayabusa somewhere to go until a Ninja Gaiden game came out. But at the same time, the series is known for breast jiggle physics.
Yeah.
That tells you everything. I hate to tell you this, Itagaki, you already didn't have a rep. I mean, to the hardcore Dead or Alive fans, you did. But to the mainstream kind of audience, not so much.
Yep.
So
that's the sad truth. Even with the toned-down version for the 3DS, a lot of that stuff is still there because that's what the DOA series is known for. There's no real way to get away from it, aside from completely starting a completely new fighting game franchise to get away from it.
The part that blows my mind on this is that they came out and said, no, it's not coming out. Which, to me, it was just like, oh, okay then. Because I never played the other two. But then the internet basically came out and said, oh my gosh, censors, blah, blah, blah. How dare you not bring this game out? Well, just like Romney said, it wasn't going to make any money, so they just released it to a Japanese market where they didn't have to worry about censorship or anything like that. And at the same time, we have... And here's the sad part of it. You know, for as much as I like to make the 12-year-old jokes, 1 out of every 6 of them, there is a 20-year-old that is signing these petitions and saying, how dare you not bring my 18 and only beach volleyball game to the States. And just makes me not comfortable.
Yeah, and really, I think another thing that a lot of people aren't really considering, because, again, a lot of the people getting upset on the internet, they're a minority even within the gaming community. The key thing here is that a lot of people that would have played these games, well, they've grown up, and and those types of games just don't really cut it for them anymore. They've moved on to either, I mean, let's face it, they've either moved on to porn, or they've just moved on to just much better games.
Yeah, so... Alex, your opinion on DOA Extreme 3 not coming to the States. Are you upset by this? And if not, what are your thoughts on the internet apparently being upset?
Well, as for the upset, obviously you guys have kind of gone the more logical route that it's just the lack of the game doing well. Well, though, by going by the tweets, broken English they may be, but going by the official statements, it sounds more like it's less to do with finance. Now, in fairness, this could be a front, but it sounds like it's a little less to do with finance and that they just don't want to deal with the headaches of the social justice warriors.
That's exactly it.
Right?
They made it very clear.
They don't want the Sarkeesian stooges coming after them. They don't want to deal with all the headaches that comes with that. I don't think the ESRB would be a problem. They would just get an M rating anyway. But
considering what I've heard about DOA Extreme 3, it might go a little higher than that. But yeah, it would get that rating, and that's what would happen. But here's the thing. The people who would buy this game, that's who would be buying it.
Yeah, but that's I think where more of the... I mean, there's... Okay, maybe not more, but there's a chunk of that outrage that... It's not coming out not just because of the finance potential that is going to be low and not sell very well, but also that, well, Koei's now afraid of the potential backlash from the social justice community. They don't want the tweet wars, and that's, I think, what's also making people upset, because it's to them a form of self-imposed censorship because people can't shut up about things.
Which is funny because you brought up the whole social justice movement. I just barely noticed the comments on the story that we're watching or that we have here, and the first one is actually somebody in support of that one subject that we will never talk about here, because there is so many problems with that movement and people against that movement. Yeah, that's exactly what happened here. Is they didn't want to deal with the... I want to find a different term other than social justice warriors, but that's basically what's happening. The feminists came out and said, how dare you put out this game that objectifies women, and then the anti-feminist people came out and said, oh, you shut up, you stupid feminists, and blah, blah, blah. And Japan basically said, screw it, we don't want to deal with any of you.
Yeah. Though in fairness, there hasn't been any direct outrage yet of the new Dead or Alive game. The Happy Console Gamer, I don't know his actual name now, Johnny Millennium, he actually posted a video where he got a few girl gamers, including his wife, together to kind of talk about the controversy, and they all pretty much kind of said this is probably more of a finance thing than a social justice thing. But there you go. That's where I can see some of the upset people because, well, Alpha Omega Sin has made his opinion known on this, and I don't know if he plays the game or not, whatever, but that's that.
Romney, you were going to say something?
No, I had a thought, but then I lost it. I think because Alex more or less hit it. Because
yeah,
I think the only thing I can really say, even if it wasn't the finance, everything. Oh, the finance coming out. Well, the game is kind of one of those cases where there's no defending it because it is what it is. I mean, like really a lot of even the more restrained feminists that aren't going to resort to shouting will point out all those points because, well, they're right. It is a fairly exploitative game because that's the audience it's going for. There's no defending it, and I can. So if it was from that standpoint, I can see why Tecmo Koei would want to step away. Especially, like I mentioned, they're trying to broker a relationship with Nintendo, and they want to kind of establish that, hey, we're one of the main developers for Nintendo's consoles here in North America. I mean, I think it's like Devil's Third is like the next one they've got coming out.
Yeah, that's the Itagaki film or game that's coming out here.
Yeah. So point being, yeah. So even if it wasn't a finance thing, that would be something that a lot of people think, oh, there's a censorship. No, it's because they want to make sure that they appeal to Nintendo, saying, hey, we have these really awesome games. Yeah, they're M-rated, but we want to make sure that we're making good games that aren't going to scare people away from your console.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I don't know if we can really hit the hammer any more on the head than it has been, but it's surprising to me that the internet has made this more of a story than it actually was. I mean, if you look at this from a PR standpoint, Koei Tecmo came out and said their spiel and left it at that. You know, and the internet got mad at it because how dare you not put this game out, when in reality, yes, there was a we don't want to deal with the censorship kind of argument, but at the same time, they also kind of looked at it from a financial perspective and said, is it really worth going through all the red tape and paying all the necessary fines to get this game out into various markets? Frankly, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't just leave out North America and let it come out to Europe, because I don't think the restrictions in Europe are as bad here.
Actually, you'd be surprised. I mean, there are a great deal of restrictions in Europe, and a lot of the rating stuff they do in Europe is actually overseen by the government. It's just the best way to look at it. America, they're more scared of anything related to sex. Europe, they're scared more of anything related to violence. That's kind of the general way to look at it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, in a European market, this would probably be a lot easier to sell off because it's just sexualized. There's not really violence to it.
There would be some things you would still need to change, though. You would still need to tone down some of the outfits. I mean, there was the whole Bravely Default scandal regarding, like, changing some of the costumes. They would still have to do some stuff like that for a European market because although they don't crack down on sexualized imagery as much, per se, there are still a great number of edits they would have to do, especially if they were trying to get it to someplace like Australia. Australia, I mean, you think it's bad here in the U.S., it's a lot worse than Australia.
Oh, I've mentioned my piece with Australia.
Yeah, and so, yeah, a lot of people use Australia as kind of the standard they go for when they're releasing stuff to Europe, so it's not really any easier in Europe than it is in America.
So, okay, well, with that thought stated, let's go ahead and move on to the next story here, because the next one that we have is kind of also a weird story to tackle. So a lot of people might remember, I think it was last week, that we talked about the Don Bluth Kickstarter for Dragon's Lair the movie. And we had an interesting development at the beginning of the week, and that was that the Kickstarter funding got canceled. By the creator, so this is by Don Bluth and Gary Goldman, and they basically canceled it with this message to the backers, to our loyal backers. Today we are canceling our crowdfunding campaign. But Dirk and Daphne are not done yet. We'll all be back in action on Tuesday, December 1st with a stronger, more valiant campaign. Valiant. We modeled after many of your suggestions. Stay tuned by heading over to Indiegogo and adding your email address to our page, and you will be the very first ones we tell once we launch out on our newest adventure. So basically, this is them moving from Kickstarter to Indiegogo to get the crowdfunding. Now, I believe I'm not sure how the funding canceled works. They don't have to pay out, right?
No, basically,
because it was nowhere near the goal.
Yeah, it was nowhere near the goal, It's just saying, hey, we're no longer going to raise money for this. So anybody that pledged money, they still have their money. It didn't get taken out of their accounts. It only gets taken out if they hit the goal. And looking at it, they were little under halfway to their goal. So
Yeah.
it's kind of, they weren't getting that much money. I mean, they were asking for $550,000, and they've only raised a total of $241,579 with less than 3,000 backers. So it wasn't doing too well.
And here's the thing that's interesting. So a lot of the backers have actually responded to it, and some of them are actually happy that they're relaunching it on Indiegogo because it didn't really make a whole lot of sense, I guess, to move it to Kickstarter. And some are just, okay, that's great. I'm not going to follow it anymore. It doesn't look like you guys are going to fund it. Mainly because, like Romney said, they were about halfway to their proposed goal of $550,000. So as much as I hate to say it, that's not a good sign. I mean, if it moved to Indiegogo, then and they got that same amount of people, that same amount of money, how much in reality are they going to get at that point?
Well, with Indiegogo, they have flexible funding, unlike Kickstarter. Your project fails on Kickstarter, you don't get anything. Indiegogo, you can at least get some of the funds you raise.
Well, but what I'm trying to say is, like, to me, this is an indicator that maybe they weren't going to get their $550,000 goal. Because I think at this point, how long had the Dragon's Lair campaign been up?
Let me check.
I think it was up for an additional week before we covered it. So that was a couple of weeks. And I'm not saying that immediately rules it out, but that also is very concerning because it took them this long to get halfway there. You know, I'm not saying that this is Shenmue 3 and it's going to sell out right off the gate, but that's not a good sign to me.
Well, there's kind of an issue with this that we really didn't talk about last time, and the fact of it is that this is a Kickstarter. I'm sure that, yes, there's a lot of Dragon's Lair fans, but this is more of a crowdfunding interest project than it is a crowdfunding receive a product campaign. They're trying to get about $500K for a pitch movie, basically. Mm-hmm. They want to make a pitch movie and try and get executive interest, get studios interested in that. And they're with the potential budget of, say, $70 million later down the line. And just, it's being that they're going for 2D animation and this is an old arcade game, I don't see it happening, unfortunately. There's not going to be enough studio interest to back up $70 million for a 2D animated film when 2D is basically dead in the water right now.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the downside here, is that I would very much love to see the return of Dirk the Daring, but when I look at those numbers and then I see them going to Indiegogo, I just don't know if they're going to do better than that. Maybe they'll hit the 300,000 mark, but I don't know if they'll go to the 550. And that's the sad part of it, is that there's a lot of money that would go into this whole process to bring Dragon's Lair to, I'm guessing, what they're trying to do to theaters across the nation. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they're only using this to get corporate interest, I'm very wary about anybody doing that. Mainly because we all saw, like, I'm not a lot of people are probably going to shame me after this, but I'm not a backer of Shenmue 3. And one of the main reasons I wasn't was because I waited for... I've stopped waiting on a answer back from the creator on whether or not Shenmue 1 and 2 would be remade or remastered to some extent, or even ported to current, like, PlayStation Network and Xbox Live for people to be able to play them. So that people could get into that story. And then we found out the whole news about, well, Sony wasn't really going to approve this until they saw the Kickstarter go nuts. And then at that point, they're like, okay, yeah, fine, you get the funding. I don't like that idea. I really don't, because I think that's what's the word I'm looking for? It really basically scams the fans. into that concept, because now if you're a Kickstarter backer, let's just say for the sake of argument, you don't agree with the direction they're going, and yes, you have paid into it. Well, congratulations, you paid however much money, and you don't like the direction. You're out however much you paid.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's just more of a general risk you're going to have to face with any Kickstarter project. It's just the way it goes, unless you can pony up the high-end tiers, which are usually in the tens of thousands of dollars.
Yes, but I also don't like the concept of Sony using that as a proverbial marketing pitch.
Yes.
Like, they don't even fund it until... Yeah, that's shady to me.
Yeah, I mean, the big difference is between what Sony did for Shenmue 3 and what Igarashi did for Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Is the key thing is that Igarashi was upfront saying, hey, I have investors who want to back this, but they won't back this until I can prove... And that's the key difference here, is that they weren't upfront, whereas people like Igarashi are upfront. And so the practice itself isn't entirely wrong if the person doing it is upfront with the backers about it, if they're upfront about it.
We've had good examples of this. We've had, you brought up Iga, how he already had backers. He already had corporate backing for Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. They wanted to see the fan interest in it. And so Kickstarter was a great way to be able to show that. Inafune did roughly the same thing with Mighty No. 9. There was a company behind it. There were people working on it. He was just approving it. I would actually... Alex is probably going to have to correct me on this. Yooka-Laylee also had corporate backers before they went to Kickstarter.
I can't be sure about that. It wouldn't surprise me if they might have had a few third-party financiers behind them, or have gotten some since.
That would be interesting to know, because there are companies, or there are developers out there that have done this. I even think Tim Schafer had backing before he brought Broken Age to Kickstarter, and he said, well, this is the remaining funding that I need. So I might be wrong on that, but somebody can correct me on the matter. So, I mean, here's kind of bringing it right back to the beginning here. Dragon's Lair wasn't doing very well on Kickstarter. I don't know if it's going to do very well on Indiegogo. I as much as anybody else wants to see a Dragon's Lair, the movie, I think the closest that you're going to get is somebody playing it on YouTube.
Yeah, or just buying the Blu-ray of the game.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which, although, if they do go the corporate way, I see one of three things happening. Either Warner Brothers will come to their defense as a way to get back at Disney, as is everything else Warner Brothers has been doing as of late, or Disney would come and say, hey, Don, you used to work for us, let us fund the movie. I mean, you'll be doing most of the work. And that's one way that could go.
But didn't he have like a bad falling out with Disney? Like Disney doesn't.
Oh,
like Dawn,
he did. He did. That's why it would be very much a deal with the devil scenario if Disney stepped in, or you'd have a third party, a different company like say Sony coming in and saying, "Hey, we want to distribute your film," and I mean, many people would think, "Oh, what about DreamWorks?" Well, DreamWorks I think is kind of under the control of Fox, which is also owns Blue Sky. So, yeah, so. The three people that it would go between, if they were to get enough funding to get corporate interest, it would go either to Warner Brothers, Sony, or Disney.
DreamWorks is Paramount, aren't they?
They were, but their films are now distributed by Fox.
Oh, okay, all right then.
Yeah, it's a mess. Like Paramount had the distribution for a while, but then Fox acquired DreamWorks, specifically the distribution rights regarding a lot, especially with a lot of their IP, like Dragons, Riders of Berk, and all that. And so their films are now being distributed through Fox, as is anything made by Blue Sky. It's a mess. It's a real mess.
Yeah. So, I mean, the downside is that as much as I would like this film to come out, maybe it just shouldn't. I agree with the concept of Don Bluth coming out and doing a 2D animated film, mainly because I would love to see more 2D animated films, but... well, there is some sheer cost to it, and it has to be justified. And if the way that you're trying to justify it is saying, well, I have this many backers on Indiegogo, I don't know how many major studios are actually going to take that as legitimate cred.
Unless you raised money in the millions. Like, if you raised money in the millions, then they'd listen. But if you're in the thousands, then most you can hope for is some sort of smaller animation studio that makes straight-to-video schlock.
Yeah, pretty much. So... if there's nothing else to add, let's go ahead and get into the next story here, and here is where things get squicky. So, in case people didn't realize, about 2 weeks ago, I have to make sure on my calendar here, 2 weeks ago, Star Wars Battlefront hit. And this is one game that we've actually been talking about since 2 years ago. Like, we've brought it to Geek News pretty much in the midst of our debates, didn't we, Alex?
Oh, yeah.
So we did that, and we all were very worried about what they were going to do with this, specifically Aldo. And we might actually bring this issue up again next week because Aldo, I think, has a few things to say about it. And heaven forbid, we have tons of things to say about it. In fact, we have a video coming out pretty soon that you guys will see where we have lots to say about it. But Star Wars Battlefront is out now, and it just so happens that I believe it was EA that actually approached the person target of the story, which is I believe the lead singer of Breaking Benjamin, Benjamin Burnley. He apparently was dressed up as Kylo Ren for Halloween, showing that he's a big Star Wars fan, and EA approached him and asked if he would be willing to say a couple of good words to their upcoming game, Star Wars Battlefront. Well, he played the game, but I wouldn't say his words were heartening. In fact, let me go ahead and just read his tweet, because, well, they wanted to pay me to post that I like this piece of shit game. Pardon my French. They can shove it up their ass. This game sucks. I'd rather watch the god-awful prequels than play this piece of shit one more second. Thanks for ruining Star Wars, EA. And it goes on even further than that. He's talking to a bunch of people, and it's like, I really want to see how you broke and I got to bring this up on screen share for a second.
Yeah, I think it summarizes it better to just show the image.
Yeah, give me a second here, and I will have it. There we are. So this is his copy of Star Wars Battlefront. I would love to know what he did to actually break it, because he must have folded it, or he must have taken scissors to it. I'm not sure which, but that's pretty brutal, man.
Yep.
And it actually looks like I don't even think that's so. I've got a copy of Battlefront, and I don't think that's not the copy that I have, is it, Alex?
I don't know.
Oh yeah, you didn't even see the disc.
I barely looked at the disc.
I'm guessing, if it's Breaking Benjamin, he probably paid for, unfortunately, the Ultimate Edition with so much crap attached to it.
Or they gave him a review copy.
Why would they do that? Because he's a singer.
Well, it's celebrity endorsement, really. I mean, they brought in Anna Kendrick for the commercials to promote it, and so they figured, hey, celebrity endorsement. People like celebrities, right? It's the same thing that's been going on since back in the 50s. I mean, you had Superman endorsing cornflakes. It's the same basic idea here.
But the bottom line is that this kind of blew up in EA's face. And frankly, the game blows up in their face, to be perfectly honest.
And in everybody else's faces.
Yeah. And I'm even going to be 100% honest here. So, I've already kind of made this announcement on another video that I did. I even told the panel here, I was going to do a review of Star Wars Battlefront. I'm not going to now. Mainly because this isn't... We have two other reviewers here, so if I explain this, I have a feeling they'll understand. I had to force myself to sit down and record footage of single-player stuff that isn't campaign. It's just basically playing all the multiplayer games on your own. And I had to sit there and force myself, and pretty much after every objective completed, I would look at the time, and I would just be like, well, I have so many other games I would much rather play than this crap. And to its credit, visually and audio-wise, the game is fine. The game is great. It looks very next-gen. But there's one nagging problem, and that is the fact that apparently Peter Moore doesn't believe that single-player campaigns are the in thing. And so there is no single-player campaign attached to this. It is 80% multiplayer. It is encouraged that you go multiplayer. I've heard it's got microtransaction markets similar to Battlefield and Call of Duty.
Of course.
Of course, it's EA.
So at this point, all of the cool features, and I've even gone out to the internet, and I've seen all the various other reviewers, and they are all as disappointed, at least the ones that I came across, are as disappointed as me when things like Galactic Conquest, a single-player campaign, and all of the other additional features that they had are no longer part of this. That it is basically Star Wars COD Edition.
It is. It's Star Wars COD. It's Star Wars FPS Edition.
And so this is technically why I'm not reviewing it. Because if it had a single... I actually see Romney giving me the smirk. Uh-oh. Am I in trouble?
No. It's just like whenever people say like COD Edition, I'm just thinking, oh, it's a singing bass painted to look like a stormtrooper, which would probably be better than the game you guys got.
Pretty much. So at this point, I'm not going to review it. It's just been so painful for me to get footage and to want to get footage. If I have to sit down and force myself to play a game, then that's my review. That's my review in a nutshell. I don't want to play it.
And we have the Dragon Shadow video coming.
Yeah, we have a Dragon Shadow video coming of us playing for 50 minutes. And after that was when I had the problems forcing myself to play the video or play the game. But I mean, that's a review in and of itself, correct?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm going to give this thing a high score.
It pretty much was.
Yeah. I know that like Romney's probably going to bounce back to me, because he's had to see some crap in his time. I mean, well, we keep on mentioning Gem and the Holograms, but he had to sit through it. I'm sorry to bring the tears back. Do we need the Prozac? Do we need the Prozac injection? Okay.
No, I'm good. They're having me take something else, and I mean, they did have to give me some electroconvulsion therapy.
Okay.
It's helped a little bit, but the flashbacks.
You can't see pink hair the same ever again.
No, the pink hair is not the problem. It's the makeup.
Yeah, it really is. But, I mean, am I wrong about this? I have to force myself to play the game, therefore that's my review.
Yeah, that's how I felt about the Halloween remake by Rob Zombie. That I had to force myself to watch it. I couldn't even make it past an hour of that film. So, believe me, I know your pain. I mean, Look, The Devil Lady, my first episode From the Shelf, I had to force myself to basically watch that twice. First time through, second time having to edit the piece of crap. And so, yeah, I empathize perfectly well.
And so, and I already know that we're going to get the hateful comments, and we didn't even give Star Wars a chance. I gave it a chance. I don't know how many times me and Alex brought this up in 2 years and saying, well, maybe EA will change their mind and they'll put in a single-player campaign. And I was probably more optimistic than you were, Alex. You were just like, no, they're not going to do it. In fact, I think what pretty much made you Mr. Scrooge on the matter was the whole field trip to Skywalker Ranch. And that actually creates a rant in and of itself because...
Oh, yeah. Hey, DICE, maybe you should have spent a little less time going on field trips, a little more time building this game. That might have made this game a little better. I don't know.
Let me actually explain this to Romney. So, you would think if it's 80% multiplayer, right, you'd have tons of maps at launch, right?
Well, given what I've seen with the current trends, well, I mean, I'd say they probably have at most 5 maps. That being too generous?
That's about right.
4.
4
worlds. There is a 5th world in honor of Force Awakens, but they had 4 worlds at launch. They had Tatooine, they had Hoth, they had Endor, and they had Sullust. So Sullust was like the one that maybe people didn't know, but it's generic Fire World. But here's the thing. If you bought the double-priced Ultimate Edition, you might have the possibility of getting an additional 4 worlds. They haven't mentioned which because this season pass has nothing on it. It just hints at crap. So basically, it's EA saying, yeah, chill out $120 for nothing. We're not giving you any guarantee.
1 game for the price of 2, and you're not even getting a guarantee with the number 2.
Yeah, and even better, like I don't usually quote Angry Joe, but Angry Joe actually found this out, is you were actually paying for things like animations in the game and emotes, which has never happened in a shooter, by the way. So that basically is EA saying, well, we're just going to do it. We're going to do it anyway. And this pretty much also, and I kind of agree with this, that as soon as they want to announce Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is going to come out, they're going to announce it 6 months from now and say it's awesome, and then they'll just wipe the servers clean, and all your money went for nothing.
Pretty much. Don't buy this shit.
Yeah, here's the additions that you could have gotten. You could have gotten Han Solo's blaster, by the way. You can actually acquire it in the game. You could have acquired items that are super easy to get via microtransactions. You'd have to play like one match each to get them. And then you would have gotten those specific emotes. And then the Ultimate Edition, you would have gotten the Season Pass, which may give you 4 additional worlds. May not. They haven't decided yet. $120, people. And people bought this.
Yeah.
I actually talked to a GameStop rep of mine that's a buddy. People did not only buy it, they pre-ordered that crap.
Of course they did. And you people
they
are the reason this industry sucks so much right now.
And on top of that, I'm still hearing that the multiplayer is broken as all hell. So, congratulations. You just funded this piece of crap and the piece of crap after it because EA's not going to learn their lesson.
That's what they are, sheep.
So, I will admit, I'm pissed off. They removed a lot of key features for me, and I completely agree bringing this back to the story. I'm not usually a Breaking Benjamin fan, but man, I'd be a fan today. Him and me are right there.
Yes, break this game.
Have
you broken your copy yet, Adam? Are you going to?
Am I going to? I'm debating. If
okay.
I did, I would make it a big affair. Let's put it that way.
Are you thinking shotgun, compound bow, chainsaw, katana?
All I know is that my fellow panelists on Geek News Reviews and Opinions would be there with me to help share in the pain.
So basically, like, one will have the compound bow, another will have the sniper rifle, one will have the shotgun, and then the other one will have the
Is it possible to buy a BFG? Is it possible?
Legally, no.
That's the only thing that I think this game deserves is the frickin' BFG.
Yeah, legally, no. I mean, you could probably find it on the deep web somewhere, but...
Truth be told, I thought of a couple of ways to handle this. I tend to be on... And Alex is going to be pissed off at me because he was... By the end of the video, he was outright demanding that I break this. That I break this game. I tend to be on Gerard Khalil's side on the matter, is that I don't want to break games. I would much rather find a more constructive use, but it's not like I haven't broken games before.
This game is too good to be relegated to a coaster. I'm sorry.
I was actually going to say maybe donate it to a fan or something like that. I don't know.
No, don't even donate it. Why would you do that to a fan?
Maybe turn it to a Dremel tool. Just put it on the head of a Dremel, spin it, see if it can cut anything.
Please leave your suggestions on how I should break my Battlefront disc on this on the Geek News thread.
Yeah, Geek News brought to you by Game Destruction.
Game Destruction.
Like Shaq Fu at Star Wars Battlefront since the 80s.
So we will probably also bring this up to Aldo, because I know Aldo has a couple of other things to say. And here's the other thing, too. Here's why I wouldn't do a review. I'm not really a multiplayer guy. So asking me to review multiplayer, not really my thing. I can do it, don't get me wrong, but I'd much rather go to Aldo and hear his viewpoint on multiplayer than mine. So I would actually like to bring this next week to Aldo and see what he has as far as problems to it. And again, to the fans out there, I'm not criticizing the visuals of the audio. It's fine. I don't think you could screw up the audio because 80% of it is recycled, but the visuals are still fine. It's everything else in the game that bugs the living hell out of me. And I can already tell you, if a Battlefront 2 came out, what's done is done. I don't... Like, if they were to put a campaign and everything back that everybody wanted, I still wouldn't buy it. Because this is enough. So let's go ahead and move on to the next story here. Otherwise, I might have to kill some people. It wouldn't be happy. I might have to trigger a rampage in Romney so that we can all share in the murder. Oh, this is appropriate. Right as soon as I bring up the next story, guess what I get an advertisement for? Battlefront. So the last story that we have of the tech portion of tonight is actually a Nintendo-based story, and one that's kind of shocking to me, at the very least, because I would have thought that this was already available. It is not. So Nintendo has announced that they are going to start selling the Wii U gamepad on its own. It's currently only in Japan, but there's a strong indication that it will go to the European and the North American markets, from what I am able to gather. So, with that, and also for the prices have also been kind of put out. So 12,800 yen for Japanese market, 70 euro for Europe, and basically over $100 for the U.S. market, which would make sense because a good portion of the Wii U's cost was the gamepad.
Yeah, and I mean, you do have to put a lot into this tiny machine to get it to do what you need it to do. So, I mean, 104, it makes sense. I don't really see a way for Nintendo to drive the cost down.
But the part that blows my mind is what happened before now if your Wii U gamepad broke? You just had a paperweight of a console?
No, you basically just had to send it to Nintendo's service center.
Okay.
And their repair center, I mean, yeah, you would have had to have paid for it, but out of all the customer service centers for game consoles, Nintendo probably has one of the best because if you're, I mean, this was back when they had Club Nintendo, but if you registered your console, you got an extra 90 days of warranty, and if it broke down, malfunctioned in any way from just use and not from any impact or anything, you could send in, like I sent in my DS to get repaired numerous times. Like, sent it in, and then they fixed it, sent it back, and it worked like new. I mean, basically, I've had the R button break so many times that I send it in, send it back. And so that's what you would have to do with the Wii U gamepad, is that you would have to send it in, but the problem with that is that you had to send the Wii U with it because in order to get it to sync properly.
Yeah. The other thing, too, that is kind of surprising to me, so I believe you can only have one Wii U gamepad per console, right? They are specifically bonded. So what if people want to buy a spare or an additional one to be able to play with?
Well, Nintendo did confirm that you can have two gamepads synced to the console. It's just that there's no software that makes use of that sort of functionality because of how expensive the gamepads are on their own. So maybe by selling them standalone, we might see some games that allow for multiple gamepads. Who knows? But that's kind of just the case of, it's not that you can't have more than one. It's just that nobody's developed software that requires more than one.
Yeah. So, Alex, your thoughts on the Wii U gamepad being able to be purchased? It started in November 24th in Japan, but we don't know an exact date for the U.S. or the European markets yet.
So, to be clear, does this mean you can purchase a separate gamepad, or you can purchase a Wii U without a gamepad?
No, this would be like if yours broke down, you could purchase a separate one to bond it. Or you could technically buy a second one to keep as a spare.
I guess I think it's a bit unnecessary because, well, one would think these are durable and built enough to last unless you're abusing the hell out of it.
Well, for the record on that, nothing can ever be durable when it comes to little kids, all right? I know that a lot of people like to make the argument that the GameCube was extremely durable. Get the wrong little kid in the room, and it isn't.
Well, that's why you don't give it to 3-year-olds.
Well,
no, I knew 5-year-olds that were still abusing the crap out of their GameCubes.
The key thing to remember is that a lot of the durability that we see in Nintendo's consoles are in the handhelds because, again, with the DS, they specifically made it so that it could be dropped. And I'm going to stand back to kind of demonstrate this. It was meant so that if you had it in your pocket right here, it could be dropped to the ground because this was where Japanese businessmen had their suit pockets. And so you could put the DS there, and if it happened to tear and dropped, they designed it so that it would...
It wasn't just businessmen, too. It was school kids, right? Because they also had uniforms that were reflecting that.
Yeah, but pretty much it was designed... They used an adult as the frame of reference. Like, okay, from an adult's average height, from this high, make it so that it can survive a drop from that height. And, well, their handheld consoles are pretty dang durable. But their home machines, though, even looking at this, I could see like maybe it could survive somewhat of an impact.
It could survive a drop or
two. It would
two.
have to be a flat impact like this. If it comes at an angle, though, this thing could probably fly apart pretty easily.
Yeah, and I've actually had a couple of friends who have had a cracked screen, and since it's just a cracked screen, they didn't want to pay the $140 to take it to a Nintendo Service Center, but they have to deal with the cracked screen. There's no other outlet that can handle that aside from Nintendo Service Center.
I think ultimately, I feel for me it depends on the price of a standalone gamepad, whether it's cheap enough to replace it or it's just more worth it to send it in. But all right, we'll see.
It would be about $40 less.
All right.
Well, if they're able to get it down, and that's the key thing, because in Japan the yen is pretty inflated, and so what may seem like a lot to us in the terms of like $104, to them that would basically be the equivalent of like $50 in Japan.
Well, and the other question that I would have on this matter is how worth it is that to them? Because in the long run, I'm not saying we're going to get it next year, but we're going to get an NX announcement at some point. So is it worthwhile even for them to do this when they're already buzzing the hype, or they're already building the hype machine for the NX?
Well, they're probably not going to phase out the Wii U, even if the NX is indeed the next-gen console, which we still don't really know. But they're definitely not going to phase out the Wii U immediately. They're still going to keep its support for quite a while.
Probably
and one thing that people have predicted is that it could possibly be a case where you could sync a Wii U gamepad to the NX. That's one thing a lot of people are starting to speculate, is that the NX may just have a thing, much like how you can sync a Wiimote from the Wii to your Wii U, you probably will be able to sync your gamepad to the NX.
Possibly. We don't know that yet. That's the part that frustrates me about this whole blasted affair with the NX, is that we know very little about what they're trying to do.
That's why,
especially with the change in regime, with the passing of Iwata, and a lot of
the change in the regime, and then also the possibility that this is not just a Wii U successor, this is a 3DS successor. So at that point, it's going for both the handheld and the console market.
Yeah.
So
what worries me is that it could go the way of the Vita, because, well, the Vita tried basically being for both console and handheld. It's just
which is why I really want Nintendo to at least to justify that answer. How is it a successor for both a handheld and a console? And I won't get that for a while, but there has been talk that we're probably going to get a few more details in the coming year. So here's hoping. But with that, there really isn't a whole lot to add to that story. So let's go ahead and move on into the entertainment portion of this evening. And the first two stories that we have are going to be, they were fan requested, and also the panelists brought them up, but I have a feeling they're going to get a lot of comments of, oh, this guy sounds so whiny. But we're going to go ahead and do them just to get them out of the way. So two prominent directors have been approached recently on their upcoming properties, or their properties that have long since ended. And one of which was Peter Jackson. And Peter Jackson just barely released the extended edition for Battle of the Five Armies, which I'm sure will sell well, because a lot of people like diehard Lord of the Rings fans, and even some film nuts like to have those for the special features. But Peter Jackson was actually asked about his feeling of how the Hobbit movies turned out, and he wasn't too kind on it. He actually had a couple of criticisms to say to himself. So one of which, the most prominent one, obviously, that got brought up was this was not his original project. Guillermo del Toro was part of it, and was going to, at least they were hoping, was going to finish it, and then he got another project and moved on, and Peter basically picked up the mantle from him and tried to do the films the way he would have done them, but I still make the argument that no director can imitate the other. Peter Jackson is going to do things the way Peter Jackson does. Guillermo can't imitate Peter Jackson. Steven Spielberg can't imitate Michael Bay, although I would actually say if there's such a thing as easy pickings, Michael Bay would be it.
Yeah, although, to argue against that, like, at least when you look at The Hobbit as a story, it probably would have been better. After having seen all three films, it probably would have been better to have it feel stylistically different from The Lord of the Rings, because The Hobbit is stylistically different from the Lord of the Rings books.
Well, that's why they went with Guillermo, is because they wanted to have a stylistically different approach to it. And frankly, I kind of like, I've watched the extra features on those DVDs, and Peter makes a very vehement argument that he didn't want to direct 3 movies again. You know, I mean, at that point, I don't know if people have seen him recently. Like, you compare the way he looks in the Hobbit production to the way he looked in Lord of the Rings, he looks like he's about to die.
Yeah.
So, and nothing against you, Peter. You look great. You look okay, but there are a couple of times where it looks like you're really tired on the set, and I'm just like, go to the hospital, man. Go to the hospital. You are not surviving this project.
Yeah, especially when you hear about how he would have the crew take like an extra long lunch so that they can figure out what the heck they're going to shoot in the scene, because that's how on the fly they were going, which explains a lot, actually.
Yeah, that's kind of the other complaints that he actually stated, was that he, like, where he did Lord of the Rings, he had a plan, and he had constructed it for years. He knew what he wanted to do with this project, what he wanted to show. He had already been working on the script. This was not the case here. He had left that to Guillermo. He was going to help with it, but he was not the main guy, and then Guillermo up and left. And so at that point, you would think he would have a plan in place. No, he didn't. And in his own admission, he didn't really take the effort to make one. He kind of winged it for most of it, which, if he had been, and I actually agree with this quote, if I was a director who hadn't had that 25 years of experience doing this in the past, winging it just would have been almost impossible. It wouldn't have worked at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where I feel bad for him, but at the same time, I understand this was somebody else's vision entirely, and he didn't want to pick up that vision, but at the same time, he didn't know what he was going to do. Dare I say, that's probably why we got frickin' Orlando Bloom brought in to be the action hero instead of relying on actual characters to do it. And it's sad, but that's the way it went.
Yep, I mean, it's sadly a common thing in Hollywood where you sometimes just have films that they're just trying to get done in time for a release, come hell or high water, for better and for worse. And that seems to be what happened here with the 3 Hobbit films, which were initially going to be 2 movies, but then got bumped up to 3, and I mean, first it was going to be Del Toro, then fans were saying, no, bring Jackson back, and so they brought Jackson back, and Del Toro was going to stay on, and then, I mean, I'm surprised none of us actually saw this coming, because it was, behind the scenes, it was a bit of a clusterfuck. It was,
and I might just actually have to put that and not safe for work kind of deal, but that's just the way it is. It blew my mind when I actually saw him say the statements of, we had to take extended lunches just to figure out what we were going to do. And I get his viewpoint on the matter, but at the same time, if I'd been a veteran director of 25 years, I probably would have looked at that project and said, I can't emulate this other guy. Maybe we just can't do it. But you would have let down a bunch of fans. And I get why Peter did what he did. And ultimately, I mean, some of the images that we actually have on the article are sad, because it just looks like his health is failing again. In fact, I know that on one of the, I think it's the Unexpected Journey one, where they actually did say that Peter had to go to the hospital during production, and they actually had to hold production meetings in his hospital room. And they found other things for him to do in the hospital room because he couldn't be out there doing production. So it's just one of those sad things of, I'm happy that the Hobbit movies came out. I have my complaints with them, but man, this is just so painful, and it makes me just want to smack Peter upside the head. If you didn't think you could do this, then why did you do it?
I think the people that probably should be smacked were Warner Brothers and New Line, because they're just like, probably. You guys got greedy.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'll bet that Warner Brother and New Line were breathing down Peter's throat after Guillermo dropped.
Probably more Warner Brothers than New Line, because New Line they're just like, yeah,
because they just barely gone through a huge lawsuit on the like they were going into legal battles on that, right? Before production got approved.
Sort of. I'm not quite sure the specifics. I just know that New Line, they were just like, yeah, we're fine with 2 movies. That's just the way things are now, where every single book that's popular gets divided into 2 movies instead of 1. But I think it was more Warner Brothers like saying, hey, we haven't had a franchise in a while. This is our biggest one we have. You're going to make 3 movies because we need the money.
And therefore, we're going to move Smaug in between the movies. And it doesn't make sense. So, Alex, thoughts on Peter Jackson? Peter Jackson's thoughts on his own movie?
It makes all sense now. Thank you, Peter, for being very enlightening. I feel bad for the guy, but yeah, you might have wanted to take a few steps back and try and reevaluate. I don't know how much studio politics and pressure probably played into it. Probably quite a bit, going off of what Romney is saying. All I can say is, dude, take a break. Spend some time with your wife. Relax.
And your kids.
And you look like you really do. Poor guy does look like he needs a break now.
Yeah, and I mean, even this article actually says, I mean, he took a 6-week he took 6 weeks off after becoming ill from the pressure of the situation. So it's just one of those things where if this had been the price, I don't know if I would want the Hobbit movies. I would want him to actually create a plan. Mm-hmm. But this is what we got. So I appreciate Peter for being honest at the very least and saying this is what happened and he's not happy about it, but at the same time this is what the situation was. So I will at least appreciate his honesty on the matter. And I'm not gonna I wasn't gonna write him off as a director after the 3rd Hobbit movie, but I was definitely like on the fence. Like maybe Lord of the Rings is his one-hit wonder. But I don't know. Let's go ahead and get into the next one, because this one is a little bit more vengeful than feeling bad. And that is George Lucas. He was the second one that came out, and he basically said, regarding Star Wars, a lot of outlets have actually asked him, if you would like to be involved with The Force Awakens or any of the other Star Wars movies, if anything for the fans. And his direct quote was, he wasn't really okay making anything for fans right now.
Well, to be honest, I can't say I blame him.
Exactly. No. Can you blame him? Everybody yells at him every day.
Yeah. I mean, there is that famous quote like saying, why would I make more? Just have a bunch of people scream at me and saying I'm ruining their childhoods?
Yeah, and a lot of people actually made his quote out to be more vengeful than it was. I think it was just that he was tired. He didn't want to be part of this anymore. In fact, the actual quote that he said after explaining the whole situation is, he decided, fine, I'll go my way, and I let them go their way.
We covered this on the show a while back, how he did have a pitch or a story concept for Force Awakens, and they just said, no, well, let us do this.
Exactly, and I think that was one of the other problems, is that he didn't want to necessarily do things for fans, like do a fan-based story. He wanted to do his own thing, and I have a feeling a lot of that might have had a big FU to the fans.
Yeah.
And then, he does go on to explain, the way he explains his viewpoint on the whole situation. When you break up with somebody, the first rule is no phone calls. The second rule is you don't go over to their house and drive by to see what they're doing. The third one is you don't show up at their coffee shop and say you're going to burn it. You just say, nope, on history, I'm moving forward. I will at least appreciate him for saying that, because George could have totally gone the other way. He could have totally burned down the set with a Jar Jar Binks mask.
Yeah, or to kind of keep it simple, he could have not signed the rights over to Disney. That would be like worst case scenario, is that he doesn't let anybody touch it. But
yeah, I don't know if that necessarily was the case. I mean, at that point, I'd heard his financials weren't all that great. He wasn't going bankrupt, but he did need the money. So at that point, it was probably in best interest. That's what I've heard, is that it was in his best interest to sell Star Wars.
Yeah, especially after Red Tails and Strange Magic. Neither of those films really did that well, and so it was very much a case of, yeah.
That is true. I've always wondered before why Spielberg never Lucas never went Spielberg's route and became more active as a producer, but given that his early producing attempts weren't very successful, and again, more recently, Red Tails and what the heck, the one you just mentioned weren't successful.
Strange Magic. Which it was a decent film, it was trying too hard to be like Frozen in the sense that we're subversive!
I mean, I get George's point of view. I really do think that, unfortunately, he has been the brunt of a straw man argument for quite a while concerning the prequels. I myself have made plenty of jokes on his behalf. I will admit I'm the guy who has made the joke about his turtleneck is on way too tight, so it's cutting off the circulation to his brain.
I've heard that joke too much now.
Yes. Well, I heard it way too much before you.
You heard it before, it was cool.
But it was accurate. Yeah, there you go, the hipster response. But it was kind of accurate. It didn't really look like he put much thought into the prequels than he did the sequel or the originals. And I get his vengeful kind of feelings. I at least want to hand him a kudos for not acting on them. I mean, he could have literally gone out and just ripped the fans a new one after the acquisition, or even before it, and just said, "Screw it, I'm done. Disney can have it. I'm done." He literally could have come out that way and said, "I did this all for you guys, and all you did was criticize it. I'm done."
Well, apparently,
he could have. Romney's given me that weird look, but look at Phil Fish. Phil Fish did the exact same thing, and technically George Lucas could have done that.
Yeah. Again, it wasn't really a weird look. It's just I thought an electronic. I thought my computer was close to dying. So.
So yeah, that's just. He literally could have said, well, screw you guys. You guys don't get the Star Wars rights. They're going to go with me to my grave. He could have literally gone that route. At least he's giving the option for new Star Wars movies to be made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just not part of them.
And he did make an effort trying to do stuff like trying to get like the Clone Wars series off the ground, trying to get a live action series off the ground. He was wanting to keep it alive somehow. It was just a case of, I mean, given what he went through, I don't blame him for wanting to walk away because, well, it's brutal.
It is sad, but at the same time, it's just the way things went.
It's got to be, look, we got to kind of sympathize with him. This is his pet project, and it has been for more than 30 years, that it's got to be hard for him to simply put it down and walk away from it and give it to somebody else. I got to imagine that can't be easy.
But at the same time, that's what he ultimately wanted to do because he was sick and tired of the franchise. So
yeah, not so much just the franchise, but the fans.
It really is the fans, and so it's one of those things. It's one of those times that actually makes me kind of sad to be a fan because occasionally we have those moments where we do give a little bit of flack to those whom we loved at one point, and unfortunately, George Lucas has taken the brunt of that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So. With that, we've covered both directors. Let's go ahead and move on to the next story here, unless we have final thoughts to add.
Well, the final thought I have was more of a segue. I think you used the wrong version of Sheik for your tagline.
I probably did.
Yep. The one you're thinking of is CHIC, whereas what you're saying here is like, apparently I'm Sheik now. Does that mean you're a king of a Middle Eastern country now? Did you like strike it rich and claim some unclaimed
No,
land?
I'm the Iron Sheik!
Whoa.
I can't even do his accent, but I'll start doing it. All you evil people, I will take the title from Hulk Hogan.
All I can say, Adam, you're suddenly Sheik, and if you're suddenly a Sheik, wow, you must have some interesting nights that I don't know about. I mean, days with Drac and Shadow, but moonlighting as an Arab Sheik.
That's what he does with all the
Persia franchise off the ground.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's what he does to all the hate mail. He puts them in the camel clutch and makes them humble.
I put you in the camel clutch and I make you humble. I don't do a good Iron Sheik. Sorry. So yeah, the story that I was trying to do for our next one was actually given by Aldo, and maybe Aldo will talk about this next week too. But we've been talking about this for a while. That geek has become chic. That has become mainstream, and it's cool to be a geek now. In fact, one of the things that I love is I don't know if you guys have followed the Guild at all. Felicia Day's The Guild. But she's also been doing music videos for those, and one of them is actually called "I'm the One That's Cool," talking about this. It's literally a song that basically says, you know, I'm the guy I'm the person you used to push into the pool, push into your locker, and I'm the one that's cool. You know, basically kind of giving that one FU to high school kind of thing. And so that's kind of what has happened here, is that geek is now the cool thing. However, a certain part of geek culture didn't follow in its wake, and I'm kind of surprised by this personally. And that is anime. A lot of geeks that I knew were geeks of video games and of Star Trek and Star Wars, but they were also geeks of anime. Granted, they were not what I would consider to be hardcore by any extent. I would actually dare say that Alex is way more hardcore than them, because, well, you want to turn the camera to show off your little collection?
Yeah, sure. Nice. And let's knock it down.
The collection that even Aldo has. It's one of those reasons why I really wish Aldo was here. So there you go. That's why I would dare say he's probably more hardcore than them, because they don't collect the manga, they don't collect the collectibles or anything like that. They just collect the DVDs.
Yeah, for those of you listening, just to give you context, we're seeing a bunch of statues, posters, a lot of memorabilia that I think a great deal of otaku or a great deal of anime fans would have in their rooms and their places of abodes.
And there's a Shadow the Hedgehog, so we can all lament. And also, the parts that I can't help but appreciate is there was a cat girl in there now. I didn't know you had a cat girl statue, Alex, but now you do.
Adam. It is Sakura-chan. It's Sakura from Cardcaptor Sakura.
All right, so at this point, again, back to the story, it's kind of surprising that anime hasn't followed suit, and I guess it's kind of worthwhile because when you take certain branches of fans, it doesn't work. Mainly,
well, I think
I'm going to get myself into trouble here.
Well, I have a few theories. I mean, the article kind of goes to say that we're still seen as kind of the outcasts, but I think part of the reason is because, well, anime is not something that can be as classified as easily as something like Star Trek, Doctor Who, Lord of the Rings.
No.
I mean, those are have very clear genres, very clear formulas. It's very clear what those are, but with anime is a large, over-encompassing thing. That's why there's even still the ongoing debate of whether animation should be treated as a genre of film or if it should be treated as its own separate entity, because animation and anime have multiple genres within them. You have sci-fi anime, you have horror anime, you have comedy anime, you have slice of life, you have your sitcoms. And so that's kind of my theory as to why anime hasn't really broken into the mainstream, is because it's just simply too big. There is no, there are certain series that kind of become popular that you see at conventions, stuff like Sword Art Online. I mean, of course, Dragon Ball Z is one that everybody knows about. But the article's kind of running off the conceit that anime is something easily classified. And, I mean, it does bring up some points, like how American publishers requested that manga volumes be included on a separate category when looking at the bestseller lists for books, because if they were part of the main list, then no American books would be in part of the top 10. And I can see why that would be frustrating, but I can also see why those companies did it, because it would give a wrong idea of the kind of numbers of what books are being on. I mean, you don't see graphic novels and comics in the same list as prose novels. It's the same basic thing.
No. The other thing that I also think would hurt the whole concept, and I think this image in the article actually kind of states it, is that there is kind of a stereotypical anime fan, and, well, this picture kind of encapsulates it.
Yeah, the shut-in neat otaku.
The shut-in otaku that has a bunch of the creepy dolls and the creepy body pillows and all that stuff. Or you could have the... I can't even believe I'm quoting Anime Abandon here, but I can't think of a better way to say it, is the weeaboo squealers, where you have the girls that literally come up to you going kawaii desune. So, I'm sorry we brought the pain to you, Romney.
Oh no, it's not. That's not the pain of like people I've seen. It's just, I remember when I was in that phase.
It's been there.
Oh God.
So at that point, I can kind of understand why, to some extent, why geek culture hasn't gone there. But at the same time, I also grew up with people dressing up in Star Trek uniforms and not making a whole lot of sense. I can totally understand, just because I knew people that were adults that bought toy lightsabers because they were cool. So that's one of those things that I understand this argument, and it still blows my mind that anime is still not being considered part of the geek norm there.
Yeah. Although that just leads to an interesting idea of, do we want it to become as mainstream as all the other geek stuff? I mean, if you look at how things like the Star Trek movies have been handled, people are still very divisive about how Doctor Who is currently being handled in terms of how it appeals to both the classic fans and the new generation of fans. And so I'm of the opinion that the reason anime isn't mainstream is because it's just too big. I mean, you can't have it just be, just anime. I mean, for example, at say you have a sci-fi convention, you can't just have it be like, I'll incorporate all anime. You would only incorporate the sci-fi anime stuff like Macross, Gundam. I'm really stretching to try to think of any other sci-fi.
Gundam, Lelouch would be considered part of that. Robotech.
Escaflowne.
Or Robotech has Macross, my bad. Escaflowne, Voltron, Technoman.
Stuff like that. And so I think that's really, people are kind of thinking about...
No, we would not include that. There's too much. See, the problem is that it's too offensive because there's too much Christian imagery.
And it all comes back to Anno in some way.
No, not this time. Not this time, Alex. Not this time.
Well, I mean, there is, to use a different example of something that does Christian imagery that for once doesn't all come back to Anno, the Big O. That's.
I'll find a way. I'll find a way. 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, but point being, I think a lot of people think, anime is still outcast. Well, I think it's because we're all thinking about anime and manga kind of in the wrong way, where we're trying to basically lump it all together just because it's not made in the U.S., which I think is a bit of a mistake.
And that's kind of a hard thing to do because, like you said, Romney, there are different facets of anime. You know, you have the Dragon Ball Z fans, you have the Naruto fans, you have the Inuyasha fans, you have the Slice of Life fans, you have the hentai fans.
And it's also like you have sci-fi, you have martial arts, you have high fantasy like Record of Lodoss War. And so it's kind of the case of, there's just so many genres that you can't just say...
I think we've invented a new trope where Romney has to flash his Record of Lodoss War DVDs. And I want to indulge this.
Does that really happen that often?
It's happened like the last 3 weeks. I swear. Where he's brought out Lodoss War.
Well, I always pull...
I'm just saying it's funny.
I'm just saying, I always pull those out because that's an example of an anime series that pretty much... I pretty much would hold in high regard alongside stuff like the Lord of the Rings franchise, stuff like that, where it is high fantasy. It's not like, it's like cutesy, we're all in a computer game. It's like, no, it is straightforward, Dungeons and Dragons inspired high fantasy. That's why I like using that as an example. And it does a lot of the same stuff they would find in like the Wheel of Time novels, the Dragonlance novels, a lot of those same fantasy novels that a lot of fantasy fans clamor for. And to bring it back to my main point, people think, anime is still getting shafted. Well, we just need to stop thinking of anime as all one large amorphous thing.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that we're lumping anime as one ginormous thing, and it isn't. Anime has defined genres that have not been looked into in really any other market, I don't think. Slice of life for us would be... I don't even think we would have a Slice of Life derivative, would we? Like
The Office would be the closest, I think.
The Office, or maybe like Dawson's Creek or something like that, where high school drama.
Well, yeah, that would be more high school drama. Would be Dawson's Creek. Slice of life comedy. That would be stuff like The Office, and maybe a few sitcoms here and there. Stuff that's based on, like Seinfeld would be slice of life. If Seinfeld was made into an anime, it would be slice of life. And slice of life is that it's taking things from everyday life and pointing out just kind of the strangeness of it. That's what slice of life is. But Point being, anime, like film, like television, encompasses many genres, and we can't just lump them all together for that reason.
Nope. Alex, you're the anime reviewer here.
Yeah.
Do you disagree with this whole concept that anime cannot be considered in the modern geekdom? Or I mean, do you think that that's incorrect, that it should be considered, or do you agree with Romney?
I certainly can agree with Romney. I think he makes plenty fine points. I don't know what their definition of main geeky is. I don't know, because I get it. Geeky's kind of trendy. We're seeing the rise and the boom of conventions. Probably we're seeing more, say, coverage in general, like news. I mean,
well, the article actually does define it. Do you want me to define it the way the article does?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, bars are springing up across the nation with environments conducive to what was once considered children's pursuits: gaming, tabletop, card games, board games, video, or all of those, and pinball, cartoons, comics, so on. So, like the example that they give is the run-of-the-mill geek might be interested and up to speed on the latest Marvel, DC, Image developments. Cartoons like Steven Universe, British television like Doctor Who, American television series like Game of Thrones, video games like World of Warcraft, things like that, where they are all kind of lumped in there, but anime is obviously not part of that, the way that they see it.
You're right. And you're right. And it's like Romney was saying, a lot of those are very specific examples, like Dungeons and Dragons or Doctor Who, that an anime is so broad and wide-ranging. And I think there's some other factors that can play into this. Anime is foreign, for one. It's, I guess you could say it's a relatively new medium. It's been around for a lot longer, but anime, as we essentially know it and define it today, probably 40, 60 years or so.
Yeah.
And it's only because of the internet, because of torrents, essentially. Torrents have probably helped this more. Now, more recently, streaming sites like Crunchyroll and Netflix have helped, that it's starting to gain a little more light, a little more attention, where it was mostly the few cult films that broke out of the cultural barriers, such as Ghost in the Shell and Akira, that could gain the mainstream attention of film critics and aficionados and such. But as Romney has said, of course, like I keep coming back to it, it is such a broad-based medium. Anime, that's one thing to always remember. Anime is a medium, not a genre. And it's so broad-based that you really can't just lump it into...
Well, it's a medium, but we're treating it like a genre.
Yeah,
what's happening.
Exactly. And I do the same thing. I'm guilty. And you can't do that because it is trying to lump it into examples that are more specific. And anime has even had its kind of peak and boom and fall. I remember back in the mid-2000s, anime was really hot. I mean, Hot Topic was starting to carry anime merchandise. Then, well, the bubble burst, and it kind of faded for a while. It's starting to grow again and warm up some more, but I think that's just the way it is.
Yep. And another thought that I would probably add into it, by the way, you might want to check your mic, Alex, because it started muffling at the end there.
Sorry.
Is the other thing, too, is I don't know if you could actually... I think Alex and Romney have made a very good point. It's not necessarily that you're an anime fan. You're a fan of a subgenre in anime, mainly because of your other fascinations. The example that I would put up here is I'm a big fan of sci-fi anime because I am a fan of Star Trek, and I'm a fan of Star Wars. I would actually dare say I was a fan of Gundam before I was a fan of any of those. So those already fall into it. I am a fan of fantasy anime because I'm a fan of Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings and things like that. So it's really not that... You could call yourself an anime fan, that's fine, but it really is like you are a fan of fantasy anime. You are a fan of sci-fi anime. In Alex's case, you are a fan of slice of life animes. Mm-hmm. In Romney's case, it would be fantasy.
It'd be kind of mixture of fantasy and martial arts anime. Because that's kind of what adorns my like shelf where I have anime, is that a lot of it, although could be considered fantasy, a lot of it is like very martial arts focused, because at the same time I also have a shelf full of live action martial arts movies.
Yeah. So at that point, maybe it's just that we can't necessarily have anime as a distinct, like I'm an anime fan as a distinction. Maybe you have to I don't want to do this to anime because heaven forbid I've seen way too many anime fans try to define anime to people and it just doesn't work. But maybe that's what you have to do, is you have to say I'm a fan of this kind of anime and this is why. You know, or to the people who love post-apocalyptic stuff, you'd be a fan of Attack on Titan. You'd be a fan of High School of the Dead, and I'm trying to think of another post-apocalyptic one for...
X 1999 would be probably an example. Not so much post-apocalyptic, but during the apocalypse. I mean, if you're looking for something, if you're trying to find something with a lot of religious imagery, X has it.
Yes, yes. So, are we talking about the X that I think it is?
Yeah.
The one by Clamp?
Yeah.
Oh. You haven't reviewed that, by the way, good sir. At least I don't think you have.
No, I haven't. I haven't even... I don't have the anime. I've seen it, but I don't actually own it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Does Drac need to find a copy for you?
If you get me a copy, I will review it.
Yeah,
I
but it's also,
might have to. I might have to let you, or I might have to do that for your fans.
and it's like, even if you look at kind of the genres, like, there's also sports anime, as well. Like, we have sports TV shows, like Friday Night Lights. I mean, Japan, you could probably count, there's so many soap operas based on various sports: swimming, soccer, fishing, ice skating. And at the same time, there's also a lot of anime based on soccer, fishing, golf, boxing.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like
still
anything
remember
else.
when Toonami tried to launch the Prince of Tennis here, and it didn't do horrible, at least as far as I knew in the numbers. But a lot of people were like, "Huh?" The other one that actually gets a lot of flack, and I tended to like it, was the Toonami unique event of bringing IGPX to the Toonami block, and that's a sports anime if there ever is one, because it was racing.
Sci-fi racing.
Yeah, I mean, look at Free. I mean, Free is a lot of people think, oh yeah, it's a swimming anime. Well, yeah, but it's written and paced like a sports anime because it has all the trappings of it, because, well, swimming is a sport.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's various other genres. I would actually dare say, like, and maybe to kind of wrap things up for it, is maybe that we can't make the anime fan distinction anymore. Maybe it really is like, you're a fan of this kind of show, and does that include anime? Yes. The other thing that I also think needs to be kind of at least to some extent qualified by an anime fan, is, are you a sub fan and are you a dub fan? Because there is a distinction between the two.
Well, yeah,
I've come across many people that have come to me and said, "Oh, you're an anime fan, so you like the subtitles?" I'm like, no, I don't like the subtitles. I like dubs. I like to see actual English so I can focus on the animation.
Yeah.
I just got like 10,000 haters, didn't I?
Yeah, that's a whole nother war, dude. Let's not.
I'm fighting too many wars here. So, I mean, overall, this is a weird concept, and I have a feeling we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. Because when we I have a feeling we will need to bring this back in with Aldo, because Aldo will probably bring this from a whole other facet that we haven't even considered on the matter. And yes, I have a feeling that not only will Alex, but Aldo will bring it back to Hideki Anno.
We'll bring it back to Anno. I'll find my 6 degrees of separation from the Big O. Challenge accepted.
I'll cut you off.
Don't you dare.
Don't I care? Is that what you said?
No, don't you dare. But okay, fine. You can cut me off, but I'll still make a video about it.
Yeah, you probably will. So let's go ahead and move on into the next story here. And this one, oh boy, this one. So, this one I actually posted up on our Facebook thread. And to those who are not subscribed to our Facebook thread, I would strongly urge you to go over, because I would love to hear people's opinions on this story. Because I've had 2 weeks to think about this. I literally saw the video prepping for last week's episode. I've had 7 days to fester on this video. And it's a video of a Fox News contributor on the show Red Eye going into her viewpoint on Star Wars fans and the excitement of The Force Awakens. Now, I'm going to preface this because I used to be a fan of the show Red Eye. back when it was run by a different host, when I actually thought there was some humor to it. I would actually dare say it's become more of a debate show now than comedy, because I haven't gotten much laughs out of it.
That's pretty much it.
For a while.
I'm with you, Adam. I used to be a fan of the show myself.
So at this point, they brought on this one contributor, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she came out and didn't necessarily just declare she wasn't a Star Wars fan. She basically rubbed it in the face of all Star Wars fans that you are inferior to her, and then started talking about how she has gotten death threats on her viewpoint. I can already hear the facepalm from Alex right now, because when death threats get mentioned, it's Sarkeesian all over again.
It's like, shut up, people.
So let me see if I can actually get the name of the woman. But so I've had 7 days to think about this story and the problems with it. And the first problem that I have is everybody is at fault. Everybody in this story is at fault. And a lot of people would be like, well, Drac, why are you saying that? The newscaster, and let me see if I can actually get her. It's here somewhere. I know it is. I'm actually watching the video to see if I can get her name on there. Catherine Timpf. Catherine Timpf, you are partially responsible for the response that you got. That may seem harsh, but let me explain. The way you said it, and I watched that video through, you were begging for this kind of response. You basically, and I know that sounds hateful, but you were begging for this response because of the way that you put it. And I really wish I could put this on video so that I could actually let people say that, or hear what she had to say. But basically, she was saying, all you dumb little nerds, and you pick out your dumb little nerd guns and your dumb little nerd swords, and you go play with them on your other side of the playground. I'm too busy being attractive and in the know to care about that. You were begging for that kind of response. You kind of brought that on yourself, especially when that thing hit Twitter. But the people who responded to you, it is never cool, never, to bring up death threats, to threaten things like rape, to threaten things like violence. Never cool. And congratulations, you just set geek culture back another 10 years.
Then you proved your point.
So, I'm already seeing the cringes from the other two panelists here. Let me go ahead and get off my soapbox now before this gets worse. But that's kind of my viewpoint. The past 7 days, everybody's at fault. This is a ginormous cluster F of a fault.
Now, I was the one who actually posted the video last week. You credited Aldo. How dare you not credit it to me?
No, the thing I credited Aldo was the death threats stuff.
Right. I mean, she mentions that in the video, too.
She does.
Anyway, I learned about this through a second-hand source, essentially, one of the many gaming channels I follow. And right, I saw the video, and I'm like, whatever, she's an idiot. It's not worth getting in a tizzy about. She's just... All I can say is, like, what's her name again?
Catherine Timpf.
Hold on a sec. Romney, did you say something? Because I didn't hear anything. I saw your...
Romney, you've gone mute. I just barely noticed.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
There we go. There we go.
Okay.
He had to let out his nerd rage, guys. He had to go grab the pillow off screen.
Well, actually, this is not a pillow thing, but yeah, go ahead and continue, Alex.
Anyway, Catherine Timpf, newsflash for you. This isn't high school anymore. She sounded like every...
That's the problem, yeah.
She sounds I can't believe she said this. It sounds like a high school cliche.
Yeah, but to play devil's advocate here, Red Eye is a satire show.
It is.
And so that is the key thing, is that she may not necessarily have been saying them because she actually believes them. It's just that she was, from looking at her official response, she was playing a character. And that's the thing a lot of people didn't quite make the distinction, that she wasn't actually saying it as herself. She was basically creating a character on this show that would say these sorts of things. And so, again, satire is tricky. Satire is...
Could you link the official response?
Yeah, let me pull it
I've not
up.
seen that.
I mean, you could be right, but Red Eye is not quite like The Daily Show where there's outright or the...
Yeah,
this is not Stephen Colbert where you can play another character. This
Red Eye, you're right. Red Eye definitely has the satire, or it did it when Greg Gutfeld was hosting, but
yeah,
it still was always kind of a mix of satire but talk news essentially.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of her official response she did in the National Review. Like, she wrote a full-on response titled "I will not apologize for making a joke about Star Wars." And in her words, it's a satirical political comedy show. And so the idea is that it was satire.
Yeah.
Granted, it may not have been very good, but satire nonetheless.
If that was satire, I'm not laughing.
Yeah, again, it's the same as the Power/Rangers short film, where, it was satire, just not very good satire, because satire in and of itself is very, very difficult.
Yeah, but here's the thing, too, is, okay, if this is accurate, she is just playing a character, and then I'm overreacting, then all the people who made these comments, such as, maybe a Star Wars nerd needs to sneak into her dark room, dress like her boyfriend, rape her, but she doesn't know it's rape because she thinks it's her boyfriend.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
No. Bad.
What the fuck is wrong with people?
Bad Twitter.
Yeah.
Do you understand now why geek culture cannot be respected? Why every time gaming or anything like that gets brought into the mainstream, why nobody can respect it? It's because idiots like this post things on Twitter or on the other various social media platforms. Granted, nobody goes to... Well, people go to 4chan. But 4chan is its own thing. This is people on Twitter. This is people on Facebook. I put this in on... Or not me. A friend of mine put this up on my Facebook thread, and I saw the thread just devolve. It just went worse and worse. And it didn't get as bad as this, but it might as well have been. Another example would be, wouldn't it be great if she was beaten to death with space nerd sticks? Not helping the cause.
Yeah. And really, you're just proving her point that, well, you are acting like a bunch of children. That's pretty much the simple point of it. It's like, oh yeah, a bunch of children playing in the corner. Yeah, you guys are throwing a goddamn tantrum. You're acting like children. So what the hell do you expect when people treat you as such?
I mean, here's the thing. We just barely made the allegory, Alex, that, she's acting like a mean girl in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is how people would react in high school. I would love to know how many of these people are legitimate people that have 9-to-5 jobs.
Yeah.
So that I can go ahead and meet them, and I wouldn't kill them or rape them, but I would definitely smack them upside the head.
And,
what the heck is wrong with you?
And I mentioned that I found this through one of my secondhand news sources of channels that I follow on YouTube, and I gotta wonder, why did you people have to even post videos about this to begin with? And I'm talking before the official death threats came rolling in, before the not the NPR.
I'm sure a lot of it also was just because, I mean, there still is that whole vitriol. It was a woman on Fox News.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if it was a woman on MSNBC or whatever other network, it would be done the other way.
Maybe. And I just why do you care what some stupid anchor on Fox News has to say about Star Wars? Now, it's one thing when the anchors or people like Pat Robertson start coming out and say, oh, gamers are just shooters in waiting and they're going to kill us all someday. Then I think you have a point to start making video replies. But this is just a woman.
Yeah, that's right. Because this actual, so the article that Romney has linked actually does say that Alpha Omega Sin made a 10-minute video. 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I
just
watched
ripping her a new one.
I watched all 10 minutes. Now Alpha, he's not gonna endorse death threats or anything. He's always come out okay, I don't endorse death threats or anything. That's stupid. He's cool on that end. But you're right. It's just like, did we really need to warrant?
Oh, and the comments that I'm actually reading. Sorry, I'm not meaning to interrupt, Alex, but the comments that I'm actually reading are not Twitter. They are actually comments from his video.
Wow.
From his video. This is people that follow Alpha Omega Sin and commented like this.
Yeah.
No wonder we don't get taken seriously.
Oh, jeez. I like Alpha. I think he makes a lot of great videos, but I felt like this was just not worth getting a tizzy about. It's just a woman saying she doesn't like Star Wars. Who really cares?
And I will at least. I'm not necessarily a big fan of Alpha Omega Sin. A lot of his stuff is very drama-inducing for me, but I will at least give him this credit. Apparently, in the video, he did say just because you're an effing idiot doesn't mean that you should have to die. So, I'm not saying that he's endorsing these comments, but well, the crap came out of the woodwork on your comments.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I mean, he gets like I understand, he gets hundreds of comments a day. It can't be easy to try and control your comment section without outright turning it off.
Yeah, so it's. I'm actually going to go off this whole concept that Rami has brought up, that she is bringing this up from a satirical kind of perspective, because I do know that the current Red Eye has tried to maintain that, and I would say that they've failed to an extent. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, she did this, and she played the mean girl. Okay, good on you. We didn't react very well. For every 10 of these hate ones, I'm sure there was one that said she has a right to be able to say this, and, well, they got thrown into the massive Lord of the Flies mess that is this comment thread.
Yeah, and to really bring it home, I think the big thing that people still need to get away from is because they still operate under the idea that the internet isn't real life, but it is now. It has been for quite some time. And we have to stop doing the, oh, it's on the internet, that it's just on the internet. Well, no. Because if you had said this to someone's face, you'd be sitting in a jail cell.
Well, and here's the thing, too. Here's the other part of this that's irritating. I am all for, if you want to have your anonymity, you can have it. But, man, when I see comments like this, you are not making a good argument for it, my friend.
Nope.
You are going to make it so that we have to be seen as our names on these particular threads, because this is how you're reacting when you are anonymous. You're literally treating this as you can be the little jerk that you want to be, and at that point, I would say you're not making a good argument for any of that. And at that point, I'm one that actually believes in being able to put the videos up that we want to put up and not be censored on the matter, and also that we can be anonymous if we want to. But, man, I'm also going to be the one that is going to be holding that against you when that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you people are acting stupid. Stop acting stupid. You make it hard enough, but you keep doing stupid stuff. It makes it hard to even really identify as like a nerd or a geek, because people keep doing all this stupid crap.
Exactly, and so I think we've hammered this plenty, but it frustrates me when this whole mess, like, let's just say, for the sake of argument, this is her actual feelings on the matter. She didn't present it very well at all. You know, like, we're talking a contributor to Fox News. I'm sure you have at least PR 101, and you didn't do that at all. That's going off the assumption that she wasn't playing a character. If she was, then she's kind of in the clear. I would dare say she still could have phrased that better. But the geeks came out of the woodwork, and all the wrong geeks. And so at that point, it's really hard to be able to do things like Geek News and not just have it all fall apart when a mainstream person comes up to me and says, oh, you're a geek, so you're one of those people that writes this stuff. No, I'm not, but unfortunately there's hundreds of thousands of people that are willing to write this stuff. So, all right, I think we've hammered this enough. Are we all in agreement?
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on, please.
Basically, we hereby denounce the actions because we've all are on the general agreement that these are all children. They are acting like children, and they need to go to timeout.
This is one of those things where, again, for every 5 of them, I'm pretty sure there is a 6th that is a 20-year-old and should be smacked upside the head. So our last story of the night for the entertainment portion is kind of a weird story. We haven't followed it, but I believe it was Aldo that brought it up. I might be wrong about that.
I believe so.
It was either Aldo or Alex that brought it up. And so this is the part that's kind of weird. This is about Billy Mitchell. For those who don't know who Billy Mitchell is the... If you've seen the independent film, The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, he's kind of one of the focuses of that film. He is a guy who held a video gaming world record for a long time, kind of in a shifty way, but he's also been a very successful businessman. All right, so he's had, I think it's a wings joint out in Florida, and he's also had a successful hot sauce brand and all that. And apparently, his life has not been easy since King of Kong. I've seen him come out and be kind of vindictive ever since that film has come out, because he does get occasionally nerds coming up to him and saying, "Oh, you were so mean to Steve Wiebe," and he doesn't see it that way. But Cartoon Network apparently did something that offended him so much that he actually wanted to do legal action. On the show, Regular Show, I still don't know why that's a thing on Cartoon Network, honestly. There is a character named Garrett Bobby Ferguson, or GBF, and he is a transformative depiction, supposedly, of Billy Mitchell. I would dare say, I'm actually going to bring up the image here. This is the actual image that showed up on Regular Show. And supposedly this is his actual visage right now. This is what Billy Mitchell currently looks like. And so I don't see why he thought he had any kind of legal standing, because it kind of looks like him, but it also kind of looks like Jesus.
Yeah.
So at that point, can we say that Jesus can sue? And so this actually got to a federal district judge, and the appearance was actually exaggerated to the point that the character is cartoonishly evil. So basically kind of going into the whole Billy Mitchell argument that he is evil because of King of Kong.
Well, sort of. It's not so much that it's like, oh, it's exaggerated to evil. It's that the judge ruled that Billy Mitchell didn't have a case because the character was exaggerated to the point of being cartoonishly evil, and is thus protected under the First Amendment.
Yes, and so that's kind of the purpose of the story, is that the story, or the case, was thrown out based on the fact that his argument wasn't very solid. And so I'm sure Billy Mitchell is irritated by this. I kind of am on the side of the judge. I don't think he really had a leg to stand on this argument. I mean, I have plenty of complaints with Regular Show. This would not be one of them. But obviously he felt the need to actually do this. So do you guys have any other thoughts that you want to contribute to this?
I just find the official... I don't watch the Regular Show. I just find the response the judge wrote really just hilarious to read, because it says that, and this is from District Judge Ann Thompson of New Jersey, that says, the television character does not match the plaintiff in appearance. GBF appears as a non-human creature, a giant floating head with no body from outer space, while the plaintiff is a human being. And when GBF loses his title, the character literally explodes, unlike the plaintiff.
Yes. And frankly...
It's just funny because it's just like, yeah, this is a giant floating head in space that explodes, and you're a 40-something with a hot sauce company. I'm sorry, but the exaggeration, it's just, I just find it funny that the judge is like saying...
I mean, if this had been an episode based around King Kong, well, first of all, they would have had a problem, because Nintendo would probably have come out of the woodwork.
Well, not really. King Kong... Well, you're probably
no, Donkey Kong, sorry. Donkey Kong. If Donkey Kong was mentioned in this episode, and they were playing Donkey Kong, and then all of a sudden his face comes up, maybe you would have had a bigger leg to stand on. Maybe. But it sounds to me like this character pops up out of nowhere and explodes just as quickly. So why he thought he had a leg to stand on, I don't know. and I hope that that not too many resources from his hot sauce company or his personal fortune has gone into this, because that would be kind of silly.
Yeah,
you can spend your money however you want, dude, but I just look at this and gone, if you say you've got a leg to stand on, then can somebody call up the Catholic Church? Because I think they've got a leg to stand on.
Okay, I ain't even touching that one.
But that's the thing, is that this is generic dude with long brown hair and a long beard. How do you think this is offensive to you, Billy?
I think it's specifically because the episode deals with world record game high scores, and that's probably why he used
Okay,
it.
then at that point, maybe he has a little bit more of a...
Yeah, so he does have a bit more. It's not just the depiction, it's the fact that the episode deals with the world record high scores, and as the judge ruling says, when the title is beaten, the character explodes, unlike the plaintiff. I just like how she phrased it specifically like that.
Yeah, he kind of deserved it that way, but I mean, it doesn't even say what he was actually looking for. Was he looking for damages? Was he looking for... He was probably looking for damages to his character and all that. But, well, I would actually dare say that King of Kong shows you damaged your character on your own.
Yeah,
That's just me.
Especially with the whole Missile Command Gestapo that he sent after someone who was gunning in on his Missile Command score.
Well, I mean, on top of that, the whole thing involving Steve Wiebe involved that guy now.
Yeah.
So, just because the guy actually sold him a board. So
yeah, I mean, especially, yeah, say what you will about like the way the documentary was skewed, but the fact that Steve Wiebe went into the gaming place and challenged the record in person, only for Billy Mitchell to send in a videotape defending it. That's what made everybody kind of go like, okay, well, how come he's not in person defending it himself?
Exactly. That was the biggest problem of that whole thing, is that Billy, and even like he was given another like in the documentary, he was given a second opportunity to come in and defend the record, and all he did was he kind of skirted by Stephen Wiebe, and you can even hear his wife say, you know, who is that? And he's like, somebody not important. So at that point, I would dare say, Billy, you've done more character assassination than this episode has.
Mm-hmm.
Because 80% of the people that probably watched it, which would be kids, don't know who you are. So with that, good on you, Billy Mitchell. Buy his hot sauce. Maybe he'll sponsor an episode of Geek News, and we can have it. Nah, he's never going to do that.
No.
But, you know, that's the thing. So let's go ahead. We're going to wrap things up because we do have a question of the night, and we also do have one cool thing. And so we'll probably with the outro we'll do the one cool thing for people. We did have a review, and maybe we'll hold off because I know Aldo had some thoughts on the matter. Are you cool with that, Alex? Because that should give more episodes to release, right?
That's the next movie isn't out until next spring. So.
Okay. So that should give some time. I'm sure maybe even Romney has some thoughts on this one. I don't. I actually am going to approach this as you guys are going to sell it to me, which is Digimon Adventure Try.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen it yet, and I was mainly because in a scramble to try to figure out what movies to watch that came out this weekend. That's actually one of the things considering for an episode of Round 2. So I haven't actually been able to carve out the time to watch the movie yet.
Yep. So let's go ahead and get into the question of the night. And these are questions that are submitted by listeners, by fans. And I may not get to them every time, but I do try to get to them as much as possible. Panelists also present these. We actually did have a couple of episodes ago where Romney submitted a question and where Alex submitted a question of the night that we did discuss. So tonight's is people have actually gotten on my case a little bit. And also the case of the panel where we have brought up that games are coming out more and more regularly broken. Or they are coming out in like a beta or an alpha state, and it's kind of frustrating for that. And especially for for all of the panel where we're fairly old gamers. We've gone through some stuff. We're a little frustrated by that. And so I do get this response occasionally, most of the time in a more aggressive manner, but somebody actually did ask this in a more polite way. which is basically, so you have a problem with the development cycles and how these games work out, and they come out broken. So I get the best way to answer that is if you were in charge of a AAA title and you were the person actually making the sales pitch to shareholders and to gamers at E3 and divulging the information, how long do you think you would need for a game development cycle so the game wouldn't come out broken, wouldn't come out problematic, and how would you justify that length of time to current-day gamers? Especially current-day gamers who are very used to this whole model of a Call of Duty coming out every year, of a sports game coming out every year, of an Assassin's Creed game coming out every year. And funniest thing, most of those gamers actually complain about Assassin's Creed being bad, and yet part of the problem. So, do we have a volunteer for who wants to go first? If not, I will go first.
I think I do have a bit of a response.
Because I'm the biggest, according to the person who actually submitted this, I'm the biggest offender of it. So maybe it's a better idea that I go last or maybe first.
Well, the way I would look at it, I mean, the first thing, what really boils down to, well, not so much what it really boils down to, but one of the key problems with the AAA stuff is the lack of time needed for pre-production. Now, a lot of people think, oh yeah, in charge of a AAA franchise, you got to make sure it comes out every single year. Well, if I were like in charge, like say I was at either Activision or Ubisoft, let's say Ubisoft with stuff like Assassin's Creed, what I would say that each game would need to at least take 4 years. 1 year would be devoted to pre-production, deciding where the story's going to go, what the setting's going to be, what are the key gameplay elements, actually spending that time in pre-production. And then 2 of the years would be actually, like, the second year after that would be actually building the engine, building the games, like, and getting all of that stuff put together. And then the third year would then be, like, the various refinements, and then the last year would be QA, making sure everything's worked, making sure everything is locked down tight. Now, at the same time, while the QA and the game is being built, I would have a separate team hammering out the plans for the next game. And it basically would be adopting the Pixar method, where as one game is in production, you have another team doing the pre-production for the following one, so that way it comes out in a smooth motion where all the design bugs are worked out on paper.
Which is technically what Call of Duty does. So, you know, we could at least... Yeah, they have Infinity Ward and Treyarch, and I think there's a third team now that do Call of Duty games. So, to their credit, they do that for that extra year. But, go on.
Yeah, so that would be kind of the approach I would take, is that with something like Assassin's Creed that is very story-driven, you would want to have it at the point where, yeah, you could have it out for, like, annually, but you basically, as one is being built, you have another doing pre-production. You don't have any one part of that chain dormant. Like, you'd have one being made in pre-production, while at the same time having the one that was previously developed in pre-production in the building phase, and then the one that was developed that went through the building phase that already going through pre-production would be in the QA phase, and that is how you would do it. Is that you would have that cycle going, and I understand there is the mentality of people not wanting to be pulled off of a project while they're building and trying to get it out the door. So don't pull people off of that. Just hire people whose job is specifically pre-production, and that is all they do. And then you have the programmers and animators and modelers in that section. That way you're not pulling people away from it. You have the designers doing the pre-production work, and then you hand off those design documents to the people who would be building it and implementing those designs into the game engine, and then testing them out to make sure that they work. Maybe even going back to the pre-production people saying, hey, this idea you suggested didn't quite work out. Let's see if we can try something else. But that's the key thing, is to try to have that pre-production time and have that quality assurance time. Those are the two things where I think the AAA gaming industry is really lacking here. That's why games like Metal Gear take so long to produce, is because of that QA time and that pre-production time.
Yep. You know, in a lot of cases, some development or game developers have been criticized for having the mentality of it'll be out when it's done. And, you know, where I get that a lot of people are used to the AA model of having a game out every year, and then they have a couple of other games that come out every couple of years, like Mass Effect or Dragon Age. The problem is that the quality of their brand and their company does suffer when games come out that are broken and don't feel like they've received any QA time. So the other thing, or before we get into mine, Alex, how would you handle this situation?
Well, I like Romney's model a lot. It has a very structured standpoint, and I think that would probably be the most logical way. And if I knew more about how game design really worked, I know some basics, but if I knew a lot more about how it really was, I could probably formulate a better answer. But my best answer would be just don't hype it up too early. Don't start previewing it until this game is well into its production phase, to the point that you're really confident in your build, that you probably don't have to go back and scrap it and start again, to the point that you're almost into QA. Because if you hype it too early, well, then demand is going to grow, and if you don't satisfy that demand quickly enough, well, it's going to fade, and then no one's going to know what happened to it. Either you're going to push it out, either it's going to be broken, or you'll push it out fine, but the hype will have faded and nobody will care anymore. And all I can say is don't hype these up too quickly and too soon.
So your argument basically would be, the best way that I can encapsulate it is the whole problem with Keiji Inafune and Mighty Number 9 is that we've had this hype train for like 2 years now, and there's still no game yet.
Yes, you gotta, and unfortunately, going to Mighty Number 9, because that's a Kickstarter project and you're trying to get people excited so that they'll fund your project. But obviously, we're talking in the AAA industry here.
No,
where,
I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, I get what you're going for. And obviously, we're here in the AAA industry where they have a lot more money, a lot more time, and a lot more resources at their disposal. So all I can say is market wisely. Don't hype this up too early when you're still in the early build stages.
And at the very least, don't have this wide desert of no information in between.
Yes.
Because then at that point, people worry that a project is dead, it's been canceled, or it's in development hell.
That's a lot of the great aspects about Kickstarter, is they try and keep you updated on what's going on with projects, even projects that have fallen into a little bit of trouble. This isn't a game, this is an anime I helped kickstart. It's called Under the Dog. Well, early this year, they had to shift production hands. The original kind of Project Helmer decided he didn't want anything more to do with it, but the other people who were still interested in putting it together are still on it, and they're still trying to keep us updated about what's going on with it. So that's that. You're right. Keep the information. If there becomes long gaps, because best laid plans go straight, and if there become these long gaps of development time because things aren't going as smoothly as you want them to, just keep us posted and try and keep us updated. The more that way, you can kind of keep the hype train building, but and not let the public consciousness fade from it.
Yeah, exactly. So those points have been brought up. Like I said, according to the commenter, I'm the biggest offender of this because I have gotten on companies' cases for releasing what I consider to be inferior products. And yes, a broken product is an inferior product. It is not optimal by any stretch. If they're having bugs that could have been fixed early on in development, that's a problem. And the fact that we're releasing those out, or we're putting them into premature betas or things like that, that's a problem. Because we expect better from the gaming industry and from developers that we have loved. But that's not what you want me to answer. If I was in charge of a AAA title, this is kind of harder to say, but I think I would probably adopt the same model that Romney has, except I would probably extend it. I tend to love the Blizzard and I believe Valve mantra. I think Valve has this exact same thing of it'll be done when it's done. We'll get it to you when it's ready. And there's a reason to do that, because then at that point you can take that time. And here's the thing too, you also have to have the brand loyalty to be able to make that work. Companies like Blizzard have that brand loyalty to at least say that they're not going to come out with a broken game if you give them the additional time. I would dare say companies like Square Enix had that at one point. I don't know if they have that completely anymore. You know, Square Enix used to be the company, well, back when they were Squaresoft, where you would be waiting 4 or 5 years for the next Final Fantasy title. And you were happy about it. I was in that mode. I still am. I appreciate the 4 or 5 years it takes to develop a game and to develop it with such polish. I think that's a great way to start things off. I don't know if I would necessarily measure things out as well as Romney did, but I would cover all the bases. I would have story developers working beforehand. I would have at least a conceptual art team working with them so that they could figure out, you know, how is this game going to look? How is it going to feel? And also trying to develop the story in hand with that. And then at that point, the next step would be developing it and getting out a build that can be tested. One thing that I would also not do, and this is actually going to be a nitpick on Blizzard, because a lot of people don't say I nitpick them enough, I would not have open betas. I would have closed betas with QA. And the main reason I would is because, look, I love getting invited to betas. Everybody here loves getting invited to games before they come out, right? The problem is that some people, you're signing, or in a lot of cases, you're signing an agreement saying that if you see bugs and stuff like that, you will submit feedback. Do you want to know how much that actually happens, boys and girls?
I'm going to guess rarely.
So the best example is I was just invited to the Overwatch beta a couple of weeks ago, and I did a live stream on it. And yes, I did submit a thread on the matter, but it was really because I didn't really do a whole lot of looking around for bugs. I submitted a thank you for giving me the opportunity. But if I had been off, then I probably would have taken that a little bit more seriously. And if I was being paid, I would have taken that a whole lot more seriously. Mm-hmm. And that's my argument here, is that you want to have dedicated QA testers being able to make sure that your engine's working and that there isn't problems and there isn't minor little bugs that can be fixed. Because sometimes minor little bugs can become big bugs. Mm. And we're talking like fall through the world bugs. You know, one of the biggest statements that was made last week was Aldo coming out and saying he ain't buying Fallout 4 until everything's fixed. Mm-hmm. And I know that Bethesda has the reputation for having buggy games. Mm-hmm. But I would dare say, like, a lot of people have made that a good reputation. Is it? Is it a good reputation to have inferior products coming out? Or is it a better reputation to, say, have Blizzards where they take that extra time and they put out a polished game? I'm not saying that their polished game doesn't have bugs, but there is significantly less because they take their time. A lot of people gave crap that the Heroes of the Storm alpha took as long as it did, but they wanted to make sure that they ironed out everything. And that's where they've got that credibility. That's why they can get away with that. They've got it. So that would be my biggest thing. And also, there would be no peaks and valleys when it came to information. I would keep both shareholders and fans involved. I would tell them, this is why you need to be excited about my product, and here's why this is going to be the greatest thing when it comes out. And that I would be doing updates. Not at conventions. I would be doing just regular updates. I'd probably be keeping some of the video game news outlets in the loop and saying, especially the ones that are keenly interested, keep them in the loop and say, this is what we're doing with the story thus far. And I would keep them consistently interested. I would not have this peak and valley where nothing's happening and they're getting no comment from me. Now, that sucks for shareholders because they want to have that surprise factor, but I'm also interested in customer loyalty. And I love it when Blizzard keeps everybody involved. I love it when companies like Telltale keep the community involved and say, this is what we're doing with this. I agree where Koji Igarashi has kept people involved. Richard Garriott is another example where Shroud of the Avatar is still in development. He's tried to keep people in the loop. And those are probably the main things that I would fix. But above all else, I would not create a reputation where I'm known for delivering nothing but buggy games. That's not cool to me. That's not a good idea. That's a bad one. And also, I would not go into things like Steam Greenlight. No open betas, unfortunately. It would be closed betas. I get where companies like Blizzard also do like friends and family betas, and they invite close friends. That's okay. That's okay to me, because usually those are being given very early clients, and those are not the QA tester clients. I'm okay with that. But bringing in like the average internet goer, you're not going to get much feedback from them.
Nope.
So
I mean, because I noticed the same thing at film screenings where they're actually asking for people's comments at the film screening, and the same sort of thing happens where you don't get everybody in the audience giving comments. A lot of people just bolt after the credits.
Yeah, I've heard that I've heard at one point Sundance was a great place for indie directors to be able to get that feedback and be able to see how well they're doing. But I've heard now that since Sundance has become more of a popular thing, they don't necessarily get that feedback anymore.
Yeah, the only way you get that feedback now is if you're friends with the Weinsteins.
Yeah, so at that point, that's the problem, is that we have these things to be able to get that legitimate feedback so that we can improve. We are all YouTube content creators. We want that, and occasionally we get it in the comments, and occasionally we don't. So, and when you don't, then we don't know necessarily if we need to improve or how. And so that's a problem. And I'm not trying to be on a soapbox here, but not everybody's perfect. And I understand that from the game developers, but I'm also saying as a gamer, we can expect more. We can expect more than EA doling out Call of Duty games every year. We can expect better from Ubisoft for doling out Assassin's Creed games every year. And we would get better products. I can guarantee you we would get 100% better products out of it if they took the time.
That's why I get games by people like Hideo Kojima, who spend that time to make sure everything works. I mean, yeah, there are some glitches, like that notorious glitch where you can get stuck in Quiet Cell, but point being, the major glitches, at least from what I found in the Phantom Pain, are few and far between. But for the most part, the game is at least mostly put together.
Oh, and another thing that I would also add in here, and I think you guys would agree, is I would never adopt a mentality of we'll fix it in the patch.
That is
no.
Yeah,
I get it. It's the internet culture, and it's the era that we can actually do that. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah,
I think you ought to treat that thing as a finished product from the get-go, and patches should be to either rebalance it and make it a little bit more friendly towards specific characters if you want certain characters played, or for additional content. And actual content, not Han Solo's blaster that you can actually get in the damn game. So, with that, I will go ahead and get off of my soapbox at least. I hope I have at least answered this for you guys, and I would also like you guys' feedback as well. If you have an idea of what you would do if you were given the money of a AAA developer, how would you actually proceed with that?
Real quick, Adam.
I'd love to read those. Yeah.
Just because I feel like someone will probably bring this up, but you mentioned, of course, it'll be out when it's done. So how do you personally would avoid, say, the Duke Nukem Forever scenario?
Keeping people involved.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the best way around that would be not trying to constantly change the engine. If you started with an engine, yeah, it may be outdated, but stick with it. Because, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, but you wanted to have to be like the greatest engine. Well, I mean, yeah, ideally, but constantly switching engines is what slowed down that game. And so that would be one thing I would do is that, oh, well, Unreal came out with this new engine. It's like, well, that'll be good for the next game, but we can't change the one we're currently making.
Yeah, and so that's really what I would do. I know that for a while there they kept people involved with Duke Nukem Forever, but then they stopped. I would not do that. I would keep people involved. You know, for as much as people like to give crap to, say, StarCraft Ghost, and the fact that that got canceled abruptly, it didn't necessarily. It got canceled on the premise that, holy crap, they couldn't make it work to their satisfaction, and Blizzard came out and was honest about it. And they found another way to do it because we've got additional content for Nova coming out next year. So they've. I'm not saying they fixed it, but that's how I would address that issue if that answers your question, Alex.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
keeping people involved. With that, let's go ahead and wrap things up for the night. So if you guys want to get a hold of us and leave comments on our viewpoints on the stories, or actually visit our channels for the various content that we do, or just want to leave us stories and feedback, let's go ahead and start with Alex. So Alex, if somebody wants to tell you how anime culture is exactly how that little picture that we put up is defined, and it's nothing but waifu pillows and weeaboo screamers and all of that stuff, how do they get a hold of you so you can defend it and actually show how much more expansive it is?
You can find me here on YouTube. ShadowBlazer3000 is my handle. This week I've got actually I got 3 videos up if you really want to be exact. Actually, that was last week. Oh well, I got 3 new videos up on my channel. One is Tamako Market, review of that anime. Today I put up Tamako Love Story, the movie follow-up, and I did an unboxing yesterday.
All right. Romney, if people want to get in touch with you about your viewpoints on this Fox News anchor and how apparently she should just be run into the middle of the street and shot because she dared show off a satirical opinion instead of an actual opinion, how would people get a hold of you?
Well, you can always reach me on Twitter. I am Romney Reviews on Twitter, and you can always find me on youtube.com/StudioPhantasma, that is Phantasma with an F, and I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/Ronnie's Reviews, no apostrophe.
And if people want to get a hold of me and tell me that I, as a Don Bluth fan, should be showing way more support to him than I am, and that the Billy Mitchell gods will come down and smite me if I don't start, you can reach me at 2 places. One is my channel, which is Drac2326. That is where Geek News is hosted. And you could also reach me on Twitter at Drac2326. And either way, I will get a response to you. It may take time, but I will get to you. If you guys want to get a hold of the show directly, there are 3 ways to do it. One is geekyweek@gmail.com. You guys can leave story ideas that you would like us to cover on the show, and if we can do it, we will. You can leave your comments on whether or not you think we were full of crap on a specific story, or whether or not you completely agree with us, because we get those too. You can also submit questions of the night, maybe even a one cool thing that you would like to bring up that you would like us to look into. We also take those as well. And that's the main email. If you want to contact us on Twitter, I can't speak tonight, and that is at GeekyNRO, and you'll get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live and the stories we might be covering, because we do ask for opinions. Like tonight, where I put it up on our Facebook thread, and I do want to know what you guys' opinions are on Catherine Timpf, and whether or not it was satirical, and whether or not she took it too far, and whether or not the internet took it too far. And speaking of Facebook, if you look up Geek News Reviews and Opinions and like it, you can again get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live and the stories that we're about to cover, and also any feedback that you'd like to leave to us on whether or not we're full of crap on an issue or you completely agree, because we like hearing from you guys, even when it's hateful and you destroy our souls. But in the meantime, for me, for Alex, for Aldo that will be back next week, wow, I forgot where I was going with that. For me, for Alex, for Romney, and for Aldo, who will be back next week. We'll see you next time for more Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions.